Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of Mr. Tilley's Math Magics. In this episode, we are going to be going on with types of data. Now, ultimately, there are 4 different types of data, and we can actually group these into another 2 groups themselves. So let's jump right in, and we'll start with our 2 main groups of data. Our first one being right here, categorical data. Now, as you can see, for categorical data, both of these subcategories of this, they use words to describe the data. It's categories. It's right there in the name. So the first group we're actually going to look at is nominal. And nominal means names. So we're not really getting numbers here. We're just listing the names of what we encounter. For example, if we were going to have a look at the cars that go past our school, then we would say, yeah, we saw Fords, we saw Kias, we saw Mazdas, we maybe even saw a Toyota or something like that. We're just listing the names of what we see. Also in categorical data, you are also likely to find ordinal data, and it's there again implied in the name. There is a defined sequence, there's an order. You most likely would have encountered this at fast food, so McDonald's or Hungry Jack's, and it's the size of the meals. It's small, it's medium, it's large. There is that very clear defined sequence to them, and I'll bet if you have a think about it as well, you'll also realize that the days of the week are also ordinal data, along with months of the year. They all have a defined sequence to them, and so they fall into ordinal data. The next one we're going to be looking at is numerical data, and as you can see there in the name, it's numerical, it's numbers. So this is where we actually start to focus on the number of the numbers within the data. And our first one is discrete data. So discrete data works with numbers, but only with whole numbers. So it would be a case of, okay, how many Fords did you see? I saw 6. How many Kias did you see? Well, we tallied up 7. You can't have a car that is half Ford, half Kia. You don't work in decimals or halves or fractions with discrete data. It is only whole numbers. You're probably sitting there thinking, well, hold on, I've seen a couple of videos and shows where they do chop cars in half. That's not happening here for the purpose of this. It is just whole numbers. Every single entry is one whole number. And finally, our last type of data is continuous data. This is the tricky one that actually does have decimals. So I like to consider continuous data as only being limited by the accuracy of the tool that you are measuring. So if I wanted to, say, measure how fast it would take you to run 40 meters, I might sit there at the finish line and count 1, 2, 3, 4, or I might use an analog clock and just count the seconds as they go by. Well, this is going to be quite inaccurate, especially if we start to race and we need a tool that is more accurate for us to use. So we would start to use a stopwatch. Now, stopwatches, whether they're on your phone, on your watch, or the actual racing ones that you see on your athletics carnival days, they go down to hundredths of a second. Well, it's more accurate. So you can start to get those decimal values. If you've seen high-speed cameras in action, they go down to thousands of frames per second and they go really slow. So again, that's a more accurate tool. But they are our 4 different types of data in our 2 subcategories. I would recommend right now, pause the video, write this down so that you can actually refer back to it later when you want to study. If you do have any questions, as always, write them down, bring them into class. I'm sure your teacher will be able to help you out. Well, that was a short one. I'll see you next time for Mr. Tilley's Math Magics.